this is our fourth meeting, and for the last three meetings, thank you for being consistent with us. And if this is your first time joining us, I'd like to introduce you to the Sharing Actions Africa meeting and webinars that we host every month to discuss the various actions that are happening in the continent. And this is a partnership between us, the Climate Champions, UNECA, CAP-A, and FSD Africa. And we organize this Sharing Actions call really to share actions, to elevate best practices, to share insights, and to develop and maintain momentum on particularly African climate capital mobilization. We've already had these three meetings, as we've stated. You may have seen in our invitation. And the last one was what we are looking forward to at the Africa Climate Action Summit, at the G20 meetings, and then at the New York Climate Week and the Climate Ambition Summit. September was a really busy month, which is why we did not have a Sharing Actions call. But this particular call is to reflect on what happened in September. And we have started now our last sprint to COP28, and that is why we have a member of the COP28 presidency team joining us today to share a little bit on their expectations of what will happen at COP28. And we have really centered this time around adaptation and resilience actions that are happening in the continent, from large industries in the energy sector all the way to what is happening in the tech space in Africa, and what should we be looking forward to when it comes to SME acceleration around COP28. We are particularly really excited today to be joined by Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak, who is our UN Climate Change High-Level Champion, COP28 UAE. And she has been quite instrumental in the way that we adjust our work and be more inclusive. And we think about the groups that are unusual suspects to the COP process and how we bring their voices into this process. So we're very excited to hear from her today about what to expect at COP, what are some of those inclusion issues that she's so passionate about, and how you can make a contribution to her agenda of making COP more inclusive. And then we will wrap up with a look at what our next meeting will be like at COP for November, which will be our last meeting before COP. And we, at this point, would like to invite you as well to contribute to the shaping of our Sharing Actions meetings. If you have any ideas of what next you would like to hear, or if there are really those strong proof points of and levers of change or progress that are happening in the continent and developing markets, please put them in the chat, and we will be sure to put them through in our agenda for 2024. Once again, thank you so much for joining us, and I am pleased to welcome Her Excellency Razan Al Mubarak to give us her statement. Welcome, Razan.
Thank you very much, Bokholo, and thank you all for joining us today. And really, this is an opportunity actually for me to hear from you. I didn't really want to begin the discussion with an overlay of yet another speech that you're hearing online, but really just to kind of mention that obviously we are at an important juncture. This is 30 days away from COP28, and there's been tremendous amount of work that has been done by the community, by you indeed that are on the call. And this is an opportunity to hear the discourse, where you are at in terms of action. I know that the focus of this call is on adaptation and resilience. This is an important legacy that we have inherited, of course, from COP27. So I'm really keen to understand how we can build on what was initiated in COP27 to COP28. And so again, really keen to hear from you. I know that I have met and engaged many of you that are here on the call with us today. And I know mainly my sort of angle of engagement has been the need to leverage nature. And that continues to be a significant call of mine. But however, we also know that using nature has an expiration date. If we are not able to achieve the goals of Paris, nature and the natural ecosystem services that it provides will become moot, and that point will become moot. So please, let's not make that moot. Let's work together as a community. Let us continue to converge and build momentum, and really here keen Bokholo to get the engagement going. I'm here to listen, to build momentum, to ensure that at COP28, a platform will be given to the priorities that will be raised in this call. And with that, Bokholo, I give the floor back to you.
Thank you so much. I like how you're very consistent with, I am here to listen, I want to champion your work, and you want to hear all the various actions by real actors on the ground. And I am sure as we're going to COP and they are organizing the events, they are thinking about how we can use our platform, your platform, as a champion to amplify their work and to bring a real spotlight to them. So thank you for joining us again. And at this point, I will hand over to my co-host, JP Jean-Paul Adam, who he cannot really outrun us. He has since moved from UNACA, and he's in New York with the special advisor to the UN Secretary General as a director of policy. And JP has been a good partner of ours in our various Africa work. And over to you, JP.
Thank you very much, Bokholo. And as you can see, I'm in New York, and my rapidity on the unmute button is still has a lot to be desired. But it's a pleasure to join everyone once again, and thank you, Your Excellency Razan, once again for your remarks and for ensuring this continuity, I think, of this fantastic agenda through the various COP presidencies, and I think building on the work of Nigel and on Dr. Mahmoud Mohieddin. We're very much looking forward to the coming COP. And in particular, in terms of the first speaker that we're going to hear from today, it's also about how we engage with the private sector and how we ensure there is sufficient investment that is leading to tangible action. And we'll be hearing very shortly from a number of speakers, but starting with Hanan Sakar, the head of private sector engagement, the UAE Climate Change Special Envoy, to hear about the role of private sector in building resilience, and also the preparations for private sector inclusion at COP28. And I think this is particularly relevant, as well as we have been trying through the last couple of COPs to ensure that we can increase private sector engagement in the investment in climate resilience. And this is particularly important because Africa is the region that has the least access to climate finance from the private sector. Only 14% is coming from the private sector. So this is a particular area of focus. We'll be hearing after that from Masofa Mushoshe, the specialist from the South African presidency of the Africa Green Hydrogen Alliance, and then also from Andrew Gachemude from the Africa Climate Risk Insurance Facility from the AFDB, and from Melis Carraro, the managing partner of Catalyst Fund, and Andrew Chang, program director for New Energy Nexus. They'll be speaking about climate tech and the accelerators program with the COP28 presidency. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for some questions and answers, and Jacinda will be facilitating that. So with that, I would like to go directly to Hanan, and I'd like to ask each speaker to speak for no more than 10 minutes, updating us on the path ahead towards COP28, so that we can really cover as much ground as possible in the relatively short time that we have. So Hanan, over to you to lead us off.
Thank you so much, JP, and good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, so happy to see a lot of faces since I'm a proud previous climate champion member as well. And I worked with those beautiful people at COP27, a successful COP27. And this year, I'm proud as well to be part of the COP28 presidency. And having the private sector engagement, I think this gives a very strong message on how this is important at this COP. And I think the scale that you will see the engagement of the private sector at, whether it's a pre-COP or at COP and even post-COP, I don't think that we have witnessed that ever in any previous COP, and this is something that we're very proud of. And our designate president, His Excellency Dr. Sultan, is always stressing on the private sector and how we are mobilizing the private sector across the different work streams. I'm speaking to you from the Abu Dhabi office of the COP28, so sorry for the noise behind me, but we have around 200 subject matter experts who are working relentlessly on the non-negotiated outcomes, and particularly for the private sector across various work streams. We have a clock in our office, so we're 36 days and 9 hours away from COP, which puts a lot of stress on us as well. And we put a lot of pressure on our stakeholders as well to make sure that we are at the expectations of the parties and the non-party stakeholders as well. So without further ado, I would like to get into the narrative of the COP28 presidency of the private sector. And I just want to highlight as well that this is not an African COP, but Africa is at the heart of the COP28 as well. And whatever we're working on, there is a very strong focus from all of the teams on delivering outcomes for Africa with new initiatives and projects, and building on as well on the adaptation and resilience narrative and outcomes that has been aired from COP27. And this is a responsibility that we are committed to deliver, of course, with the help of Her Excellency Razan and the high-level climate champion and all of the team on this call and behind the scene as well. We're working to ensure the continuity of the legacy of the COP27 to be executed as well at COP28. We're working on around 80 projects and initiatives this year just for the non-negotiated outcomes. Some of them, you have seen them being launched pre-COP, and some will be launched at COP. And we always make sure that these projects and initiatives are legacy. They are not just something that you will see at COP and then it fades away. We're making sure that this is something that's owned by the private sector as well. And the responsibility falls within the private sector as well to ensure that this goes on, whether at a local, regional, or a global level as well, to benefit the whole ecosystem of the climate at mitigation, resilience, and adaptation as well. This year, what new you will see at COP, we are bringing everyone on the table, including the oil and gas sector, the heavy emitting sector. We believe that they are very crucial part of the conversation, and our projects as well. We don't want to isolate anyone from this conversation because everyone is responsible. We believe that the private sector plays a crucial role in fixing the gap of the global stocktake and accelerating action towards achieving the NDCs. There are a number of work streams over here. Again, we're a massive team, so you will see initiatives coming out of the energy team with regard to fast-tracking energy transition by bringing, again, players from the oil and gas sector and the heavy emitting sector, and particularly from the global south as well and the global north as well. And that would be to scale up the use, for example, of the low-carbon hydrogen, the green steel, cement, aluminium, and to create an ecosystem of supply and demand for green energy-based products. One of the good things of this COP that it's being run by a businessman, so he understands as well the economic imperative of what we're doing. That it's not just asking corporations to be investing money in the transition, but we need as well to highlight and create the opportunities for that. And one of the good things and strong things that has been announced at the Africa Climate Summit, the 4.5 billion as well initiative from the UAE with the clean energy investment in Africa. We have the inclusion pillar because, again, we don't want to be forgetting anyone. Everyone is coming into the table, and SMEs as well is one of our focus segments of business that we believe that it's forgotten under the climate narrative, having that they find difficulties in accessing ESG information. They don't have the financial resources. However, they are a very big chunk of the total emissions when it comes to private sector. And to that, we have as well launched the COP28 and SME Climate Hub, which is one of the partners of the Race to Zero, and which is the UN-backed and the high-level climate champion campaign for Race to Zero. And this is for MENA, but again, we're inviting everyone to join our journey as well. This is something brilliant for the African business to check a free of charge educational tool, free carbon calculators, as well with a very credible campaign like the Race to Zero. Climate finance, we're working with the World Bank and the other stakeholders as well to make finance more affordable and accessible. And that's again at the non-negotiated outcomes. At the negotiated outcomes, we're still the 100 billion conversation and the other topics that has been carried forward from the COP27 is being handled with our negotiation team, the loss and damage, the adaptation finance, all of the Article 6, all of these topics are still going on with, and we're very active, and we are still witness a lot of substantial outcome at this COP. Towards building the resilience and empowering the most vulnerable communities as well, we're mobilizing the private sector towards climate finance and encouraging innovation in food, water, and health system. And if you got a chance to check our program and thematic days, you will see that we were very keen in order to highlight the topics that are going to be discussed on these days. And these topics are reflected as well in our narrative and initiatives. We understand as well there is a lot of African businesses are not going to be able to join us at the COP28, but we invite you as well to keep an eye on our initiatives, our narrative. We want you to be close to us until the term of COP28 ends by next year. Hopefully we don't host COP29, but we'll see. But we still urge you to keep an eye close to our initiatives, reach out to the teams. There are different venues to reach out to us, whether through the high-level climate champions or on the website or the initiatives itself. We as well launch a lot of webinars for capacity building pre-COP, and there will be some during COP, but post-COP as well. Again, we're not going to disappear after the day of the COP. We're going to be there until the term and make sure that our initiatives and our projects are in safe and good hands, and it doesn't die with the COP28 event. Thank you so much, and happy to take questions as well.
Thank you so much, Hanan, for this update. And I would invite everyone, please, you can put your questions in the chat in the interim. At the end, there will be a chance for people to come in as well after we've heard from all of the speakers. But in the interim, if you do have specific questions, please put it in the chat. Thank you, Hanan, for updating us on this consistent engagement with the private sector, which I think has followed us from a few COPs now, and in particular ensuring that there is strong African engagement and across the space, not only in, let's say, the areas where we traditionally associate the private sector, such as around energy, but also in the adaptation space. And there is an opportunity as well around nature for us to, and we have to engage with the private sector on these things. The point as well about the participation of oil and gas is to make sure that we have a process that truly addresses the challenges and the opportunity, because I note, for those of you who have seen the new International Energy Agency report, which has actually said that the cost of renewables now is so competitive that we are on a trajectory where it just does not make sense to invest in other sectors. Renewables are really the way to go, but there will be legacy oil and gas, and this is probably going to be even more of a reality in the developing world because of the challenge of, for example, base generation. And the Africa Group of Negotiators recently emphasized that the global North needs to do more to reduce investments in fossil fuels and accelerate investments in renewables and clean energy. And we note as well that the outcome of the Africa Climate Summit is focusing on this opportunity, this comparative advantage for Africa in terms of climate positive growth. And that includes around empowering small and medium enterprises and also looking to the opportunity around carbon markets. I won't go into too much more detail because there was so much in terms of what you presented, and thank you so much for this update. We now will go to our next speaker from South Africa and have the pleasure to introduce Masofa Mashoshe, the specialist in the South African Presidency's Investment and Infrastructure Office from the Africa Green Hydrogen, and he will be speaking about the Africa Green Hydrogen Alliance, where South Africa has recently taken the presidency. So Masofa, over to you, and please correct my mispronunciation as needed so that we are all educated on the correct way.
No problem, Jean-Paul. My name, everyone, is Masofa Mashoshe. Thank you for the opportunity to join you. As you said, I am the green economy specialist in the presidency of South Africa. South Africa is also one of the founding members of the Africa Green Hydrogen Alliance, and on the sidelines of the Africa Climate Summit, took over as chair of the Africa Green Hydrogen Alliance. From a South Africa perspective, as a starting point, before we expand the discussion a bit more across the entire continent. So South Africa has quite a fossil fuel intensive energy mix. We are looking at ways in which we can decarbonize our hard to abate sectors, and we are well positioned as a potential large scale low cost producer of green hydrogen. We have significant renewable energy resources in terms of wind and solar, in this case onshore wind, as well as a large grid, a long coastline, as well as industrial capability in the production of hydrogen. One of the largest producers of hydrogen on the continent, Sasol, is a South African company producing about 2.4 to 2.5 million tons of grey hydrogen a year. So it is a molecule that we are well experienced in terms of handling. The opportunity really is, how do we facilitate, in a South African context, a transition in a manner which is just? So we have large communities that are dependent on fossil fuels. Our historic energy mix, about 80% of it comes from coal-fired power stations in a region to the northeast of the country. And the question becomes, how do you transition these communities, businesses, and industries towards green? And a way in which we've envisaged to do that is to leverage the use of green hydrogen to drive South Africa's decarbonization in a manner which leverages this green molecule to drive reindustrialization. So how do we link our mineral endowment with our renewable energy endowment to drive first stage beneficiation in country and not be an exporter of a new form of energy for its combination and value add in other parts of the world. We do see exports leading in terms of this, in terms of the production of ammonia. But ultimately, as we come down the cost curve of green hydrogen, the intention is to produce products for exports. mention was made of elements like green steel. So we have a mothballed DRI steel mill in the southwest of the country and not far from Cape Town in a place called Saldanha Bay, which wasn't competitive with steel imports from the east and was mothballed in a relatively small community. What is the potential to produce green steel using a green hydrogen? We are also a large exporter of iron ore. And these elements become part of the discussion around green hydrogen opportunities. From a corridor perspective, our neighbor to the north west is Namibia along our western coastline, and there's really significant opportunity for a regional approach to green hydrogen production. Namibia also is well endowed with renewable energy assets and is potentially a low-cost international producer of green hydrogen. We are linked through a single regional grid where we supply 100 megawatts of electricity to Namibia. What is the potential for them with their superior wind resources to send electrons the other way, for us to expand grid infrastructure to be able to lead to sort of greater integration and penetration of renewable energy resources. We do have one of the largest, if not the largest, deployment of renewable energy assets on the continent. We have about 7 gigawatts of installed capacity of both wind and solar developed over a 10-year period. But in order to meet the potential of green hydrogen, and not by only 2050, but some of the studies that we have done, as well as others that the Africa Green Hydrogen Alliance have done, in terms of what we need to be able to produce by 2030 in order to be a recognized competitive international player within the space, to show our ability to build large-scale industrial infrastructure and be a reliable supplier of products to offtake markets, really becomes a 2030 strategy. And in order to do that, our aim is to be able to produce 3 to 5 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity supported by 6 to 10 gigawatts of renewable energy. So we need to do, within a 5-year period, more than what it has taken us more than a decade to do to date. So these are some of the challenges. Others have already touched on it, elements like concessionary finance, others such as access to market, because we can have all this production potential, but if all the developed world is interested in is receiving raw minerals from the global south, as well as a new form of energy for the decarbonization of their own industry, and not participating in a substantive discussion around how we create value-added products in the global south, then we are in very much a circular discussion. So the Africa Green Hydrogen Alliance founding members also includes Kenya, Egypt, Morocco, and Mauritania. We've also accepted recently, on the sidelines of the Africa Climate Summit, 2 new members, being Angola and Ethiopia. And Angola forms another opportunity for an extension of this southwestern corridor along the southwestern coast of Africa. So, you know, the entry points to markets of these different countries are not the same. So even though there is potential for us to compete for premium early stage demand, we understand that the requirements for the development of a nascent sector gives us more benefit from collaboration than competition. Also, the unique elements of each of these markets are different. Morocco, Mauritania, and Egypt have proximity to Southern Europe and the potential to supply hydrogen in the form of gas. Egypt has interesting projects along the Suez Canal for bunkering fuels and other elements, which takes advantage of that locational competitive advantage that they hold. Kenya has a largely green grid, which is more than 90% renewables. It's a relatively small energy output in comparison to South Africa, but has strong potential for the production of green ammonia to green fertilizers as a net importer of fertilizers. So the core of it is sort of different markets with the advantage of collaboration, and some of the core issues for us to take forward in order to stand any chance of the development of this nascent sector is the models require concessionary finance. We have, as a country, elements like the Just Energy Transition Partnership, which was announced in Glasgow, the investment plan around that, which was announced at Sharm el-Sheikh, as well as sort of a more detailed but sort of questions around the level of concession, the level of grant funding in that mix. Is it funding that is really additional, and other elements that we are unpacking and debating around. And there'll be interesting pronouncements around that by government at COP, but also for general projects across the pipeline of all AGA members. The sort of financial viability of this is very dependent on concessional finance. And the other one is around market access. If there isn't this strong ability for us to access some of this premium stage, early stage premium markets, then there'll be very little development of these products because of the premium associated with it. But looking to expand the network further and hoping to engage with many of you on the sidelines of COP this year. Thanks.
Thank you, Mustafa. Perfect. Just on 10 minutes, absolutely well timed. Maybe I could have a quick, just a quick point from you in 30 seconds. What about the, you emphasized the just transition. What about the jobs aspect? How are we looking at the job creation aspect around green hydrogen and the transition towards renewables?
Sure. I mean, this is an ongoing debate because it's real practical jobs in fossil fuel value chains against potential net jobs in a new transition. And that's difficult for people to be able to quantify and accept. And for us, it's less on the energy generation part, but rather using the green energy as a way in which to drive a green reindustrialization, which is much more sticky. We've seen it in elements where sort of coal-fired power stations close down. The sustainability of them as an employment perspective is difficult to replicate through renewable energy, which has a spike, let's say, during construction, but very little ongoing jobs through the production and maintenance component. It's really that as a value add into industry and seeing where we can ideally locate some of these industrial processes. Thanks.
Thanks so much. I think, as you've said, and I like this term of a green reindustrialization, because it's about reimagining what the economy looks like in Africa, tapping into the comparative advantage that Africa would have around nature, for example, around its natural capital, and also in terms of generation of all of these renewable resources and for example, through green hydrogen, but looking at it not only as an export, but something that would power its own Africa's own industrialization and processes linking to decent jobs. And I would like to emphasize a point that Masopa highlighted, which is this regional cooperation approach and this, well, multiple countries need to be looking at their investments as complementary and linking up in terms of the opportunity, both vis-a-vis external markets and meeting internal needs within the economy. Also, I think he highlighted the challenge of concessionary finance and the need to be able to mobilize these financing at scale, and that it is truly concessional and additional, and ensuring that this reaches those that need it and at speed and at scale. We'll now move to our next speaker. We'll be speaking on the Africa Climate Risk Insurance Facility for Adaptation. And we have Andrew Gachemude, the sector manager from AFDB, who'll be briefing us on this absolutely critical facility for us to deliver climate resilience on the continent. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, and really appreciate the opportunity to be on this platform and have the opportunity to explain a bit about the work and the advancement that we'll be doing around the Africa Climate Risk Insurance Facility for Adaptation. And also just get a chance to listen to what like-minded partners are doing. I appreciate the invitation from the Climate Champions team, Jacinta, and also the work that we've been doing, collaborating with FSDA and some of the others on this. So just to, I guess, mention how this facility came about. I imagine there was, well, I expect you're aware of a similar type of initiative or a seed of this that was launched in COP27 at Sharm el-Sheikh under the framing of the ACRF, the Africa Climate Risk Facility. It was launched by one of the climate champions, and then together with the FSDA and other partners, including the consortium of insurance companies under the Nairobi Declaration of Sustainable Insurance. At that time, the leadership of this initiative met with the president of the African Development Bank, my president, Dr. Akina Desina, together with our vice president. And given the leadership that the AFDB has played with regards really advancing the role of insurance to protect particularly sovereign against food-related climate disasters using insurance, particularly through a program that is about 8 years now at the bank, the ADRIFI, Africa Disaster Risk Financing Initiative, implementing through the Africa Risk Capacity, which was one of the leading insurance or reinsurance companies in the continent, working together with the NDSI, FSDA, and others in this initiative. This committed, our president then committed to provide support, and along with some of the other initiatives in this space, this then dovetailed into what we're now calling ACRIFA, the Africa Climate Risk Insurance Facility for Adaptation. This is led, so I lead the program on agri-SME development and impact financing. So really a key role that we see this facility playing, or insurance, is really coming in to provide end-to-end protective coverage of the agri-food sector, which is one sector in the continent that we feel is particularly climate vulnerable, a sector in which, for a bank that is looking to increase the provision of investment and capital into this sector, recognizing the development imperative that this sector holds for, you were talking earlier about jobs, for support of small, medium enterprises, recognized as the engine of growth, and particularly so in the food sector. So the idea of small, medium enterprises focused on a climate vulnerable sector such as agriculture, and then the intersection of risks simply means that for providers of capital like us, like banks who are risk averse, it becomes critically important to leverage in a systematic way the risk management and risk absorbing mandate of insurers. And that's really what this Africa Risk Facility was about, has come about. We have accelerated the development along with some of our partners, as I earlier mentioned, some of which play leading roles in this platform. And given the commitment of our president on this, we actually formally launched ACRIFA in Nairobi at the African Climate Summit. And basically what was launched was a commitment of ourselves as the African Development Bank and our partners, the African Union being a key member as the representative of the African nations. And so the launch was actually presided by our president, Adesina, along with the president of the Union of Comoros, serving as the chair also of the African Union. And essentially what was launched, or ACRIFA, is an intention to mobilize $1 billion in concessionary high-risk capital and grants, really to stimulate the development and uptake of targeted climate insurance solutions, but those that would be delivered through the African primary insurers and regional reinsurers across the continent, recognizing that up to now, a lot of support within the agri-SME has been small and really has served as a transition where African insurers, reinsurers really are just transiting the risks, taking commissions and taking it out to global retro markets. So in order to solve for this and to really leverage the network of primary insurers across the continent, ensuring capital and capacity and commercial opportunity flow through them, building their risk absorbing capability, and then through continental reinsurers and up to international reinsurers. To do so, we recognize that we need to solve the client acquisition challenge, especially since agriculture is largely fragmented. Also, SMEs by their nature are quite small volumes of business. So in order to make this attractive to the private sector, really supporting aggregation to improve uptake and to achieve scale, and also supporting portfolio diversification by looking at regional risk sharing of insurance companies at the primary level. On top of that, supporting the design and scaling of climate insurance solutions to cover a whole range of the risks that affect the agri-food sector, which include production risks at the farm level, drought, flood, pests, climate-induced pests, but also credit risk, price risk, and transition risk, among others. To ensure support to the enabling environment, ACRIFA resources will support and facilitate investments in data, digital, and human capacity that are required to meet the broader goals that ACRIFA seeks to advance. And also, in particular, and in order to mobilize these resources, we are keen to work with stakeholders in the insurance industry to really highlight the underappreciated role of insurance as a bona fide adaptation intervention, but also the role it can play within mitigation and for loss and damage. And as such, we're also working with some partners such as the Green Climate Fund and others who have likewise recognized insurance as a key intervention within this space. I suppose another, recognizing the within the framework of the UNFCCC and various articles that begin to also highlight the importance of insurance as a core risk management mechanism. You have this also interface within the Kyoto Protocol and within certain articles of the Paris Agreement, underscoring really the importance of climate risk pooling and other insurance solutions. So we plan to leverage all these to really make the case of insurance, as I said before, as critical to advancing our climate financing goals, and therefore to mobilize this concessional climate and concessional capital and grants in order to support the insurance ecosystem and the enabling environment around it. One of the, from the point of view of the private sector, the insurance industry, having worked with and engaged in the development of this with several of their partners, including, but beyond also, including partners within the Nairobi Declaration of Sustainable Initiative, but others who are also keen to help us uncover the challenge and obstacles that need to be addressed in order to scale. I think one had mentioned earlier is solving for high and prohibitive costs of client acquisition, solving to aggregate premiums into investment attractive volumes, solving for affordability and relevance of insurance portfolios, and solving to geographically diversified climate risk. And so these are the areas to which we will be designing more concrete projects and programs, operations that we can invest in and that we can mobilize the climate resources we're discussing. So I think with regards moving forward, as we continue to advocate, as we continue to design with partners, we're looking forward to also further engaging partners and mobilizing support for AGRIFA at COP28. We have thus far, through the African Development Bank, have identified Africa Pavilion, a particular event on the 2nd of December that we are trying to finalize commitments to, and then begin to design programs. So begin to design the programs, those partners that will call in to provide support. And so for this, we'd like to also work jointly with you and see how we can align. Also earlier hearing from Hanan, I think it will be useful to reach out and see how we can align with other private sector initiatives, since this is really about the African private sector within the insurance space. And I think I'll leave it at that for now and look forward to any further questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you to everyone who's put questions in the chat, by the way, and I would invite the speakers at the end, if you will probably have a very short period to just briefly address those, but please address them in the chat. And also feel free, everyone, not only questions, but please give us your recommendations. What do you need to see? What do we need to see unlocking at COP28 and beyond? And Andrew, thank you so much for those points. And I think, as you pointed out, the agri-food sector, the most at risk from climate, but also with insurance could be the most opportune sector for investment. But we really need that architecture, the insurance capacity, particularly around adaptation, to be unlocked. And these kinds of vehicles that you have been developing are key to that. And we look forward to hear from more of it at COP and being able to upscale it to the level that is required. As you said, how do we bring on board more partners, and how do we allow this to happen really at the scale that is required to unlock the investment that is needed? So we have our last two speakers who will be speaking on the role of technology on climate tech and the accelerators program with the COP28 presidency. And we'll be hearing from Melis Carraro, the managing partner at Catalyst Fund, and Andrew Chang, the program director at New Energy Nexus. So Melis and Andrew, we are on time, but if you could be succinct, we can have more time, because there are a lot of questions I think that'll come up. That'll be great. So Melis, over to you first.
Fantastic. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be with everyone here, see some familiar faces and many new ones. My name is Melis. I'm the managing partner of the Catalyst Fund. And Catalyst is an impact fund and accelerator backing early stage tech ventures, building a climate resilient future in Africa. So in essence, our goal is to invest in tech-enabled solutions or tech-first solutions that can help communities manage risk, adapt their livelihoods, and also build long-term resilience to climate change. And we're actually the first pre-seed, so very, very early stage fund across the continent that really has a thesis solely focused around adaptation and resilience. So what does this mean? We invest really across three pillars that we defined after nearly 2 years of research of what the opportunities are across the continent to advance adaptation. And the three pillars are, first, fintech for climate resilience, which includes solutions such as insurance, which could be insurance for disasters, for assets, for crops, but also other types of new area yield or parametric insurance, so innovative insurance solutions in and of themselves, as well as climate data solutions to reduce the pricing, basically, of climate risk in financial services and carbon finance marketplaces. We then invest on the second pillar that we define as sustainable livelihoods, so solutions in regenerative agriculture or ag tech more broadly, land restoration and fishery management and aquaculture, often falling under what people define as climate smart agriculture. And then finally, we invest in climate smart essential services, which for us means essential services in a warmer world. For example, water management and water access, healthcare, waste management, and also cold chain and cooling solutions. And our view in defining this ecosystem of opportunity was really that every sector of the economy has to adapt to the impacts of climate change. And so a diversified approach will allow us to unearth the innovations that can truly deliver benefits to vulnerable communities. And we have to cast a wide net because, as everyone in this call knows, the climate adaptation and resilience ecosystem is very nascent. There's still a perceived but also real sense that there's a lack of bankable projects, which is why we are there to fill that gap at the very early stage, work with founders that build those solutions and broaden the spectrum of what's available for vulnerable communities. So we reached our first close in August 2023, which in the investment jargon means the first step to the full size of our fund. And we invested in 16 companies across 7 markets and 9 adaptation sectors since January 2023, including solutions in ag, waste management, in land restoration, for example, this incredible company called Centigreen in Morocco. And all that they have in common is really the ability to leverage climate tech, but often it's actually technologies that we wouldn't otherwise define as climate tech, but have an impact in reducing a climate vulnerability across these sectors. So it's been an incredibly exciting journey since the start, and incredibly exciting to see the growth of this space in just 18 months of us being active here. And the way we work with companies is actually unique, and I think adapted to the stage at which the ecosystem is at today. So first, we invest early. So we're usually the first institutional check into the companies at pre-seed. We invest $200,000. And why is that? It's because often companies look for that investment lead, but investors don't want to take risk. There's a lot of perceived and real risks of investing across the continent and in the nascent sector. So we want to take that and actually be the first ones. We follow on. So we plan to actually fill the capital gap all the way through Series A. So really the longer journey that it takes to de-risk technology and business models. So we follow on with the investments at seed and Series A rounds and plug the valley of death. And thirdly, we combine capital with human capital investment. For us, this means that we, in each investment ticket, actually include venture building support delivered by a team of experts and operators with experience building companies in Africa. I myself was an entrepreneur before, and so was the rest of the team. And we essentially become part of the investment teams as the interim CFO, CTO, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Growth Officer, so that we can really help the companies overcome early hurdles and grow their businesses to a point that other investors that focus more at later stages, right, even potentially development finance institutions later on can come in. And then lastly, we have impact at our core. So we invest in a thesis-driven approach, really focusing on building up this sector in climate resilience, where we see a tremendous opportunity across Africa and other emerging markets, and also with an ecosystem building approach. So how do we actually unlock more capital to come in by forging the right partnerships, by ensuring that we build excitement around this opportunity, that we really showcase African innovators as leaders in climate action. Africa is not a climate victim. It is really a powerful hub for climate innovation. So we had a large event at Africa Climate Week that we hosted called the Africa Climate Tech Festival. It gathered over 300 people between investors and startups, and it was really a lead up to COP28. So to your last and final question on what are our plans, we hope to continue to gather the community of startup innovators and investors and also ecosystem builders at COP28. We'll have several events around the theme of accelerating innovation for resilience and adaptation with UNIDO, with the Global Environmental Facility, and others. And the 3 key messages for us are, first, Africa is a powerful hub of climate innovation. We're seeing innovators in climate tech beyond the energy sector. So in water, agriculture, food systems, health, urban innovation, like how do we keep our minds open to everything that will help in enabling a transition to a low carbon future and a resilient future? Second, we need more capital in this space, especially for adaptation and resilience, where the gap stands at about $578 billion by 2030 for Africa alone. And clearly it's a huge gap. And to do that, we need to think creatively. So how do we leverage blended finance, both for new financing vehicles, as well as for the investment instruments into new startups? And that's really key to break down the trillions needed into the instruments that can actually reach the SMEs, the innovators, and then ultimately the communities on the ground. And lastly, in order for innovations to scale and grow, we really need an ecosystem approach. And so fostering early engagement between private sector, early stage funds like ourselves, larger corporates, government, civil society, research organizations, so that we ensure what we do is not happening in silo. We are not, inventing or supporting innovations that might have an unintended consequence on communities, maladaptation, for example, and really try to do this building together. So those would be our three key messages for COP28.
Perfect. An ecosystem approach, absolutely. I think that's key, and we're perhaps starting to see that emerge, particularly after the Africa Climate Summit. I'm going to go quickly now to our last speaker, who is Andrew Chang, who will be speaking to us from the perspective. So he's the program director of the New Energy Nexus. So Andrew, over to you in terms of your thoughts on climate tech,
Awesome.
tech and accelerators.
Well, first of all, thank you for the organizers and the Climate Champions team for this invite. Milas, you're a hard act to follow, I must say. But I'm excited to be here and to tell you a little bit about New Energy Nexus, but also the program that we're running in collaboration with COP28. So just a quick background, New Energy Nexus, we're the world's largest ecosystem of funds and accelerators supporting early stage climate entrepreneurs. Our mission is to drive innovation and build equity into the global clean energy economy. We currently have 12 chapters around the world. I'm currently based in Shanghai, but you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from Bay Area, California. Our goal really is to support climate clean energy entrepreneurs, and different chapters around the world. We have an approach in what we call markets that matter that can help really a lot of early stage companies cross that first valley of death. And this is where, Milas was really talking about the importance of an ecosystem approach, that we not only provide venture building, capacity building, skills building, but be able to pair that with capital, and at capital that doesn't eat away at the founder's equity. And so with that, we this year are partnering with COP28 to run the New Energy Nexus COP28 Climate Tech Startup Accelerator. We launched this in August, and we had about a month of open applications, and I'm excited to share that we have 380 applications total, all from around the world, and many particularly from the Global South. And we're very excited to have shortlisted those 380 companies now to 100 companies. And in this program, we have three key objectives. One is to increase access to new forms of capital. Two, build skills, both hard skills and soft skills. And three, be able to catalyze new creative partnerships amongst each other or with the speakers that we bring into the program, and of course on the ground at COP28. Now, we're currently in sort of the middle, right before the program start date, which is really November 7th. We're going to have 1 month of online programming. And a lot of these companies, as I mentioned before, are pre-Series A, and they're focused on sectors such as renewables, energy access, the nexus of food, water, and ag tech, urban transport, electrified transport. And so a lot of cool companies, from battery swapping in Bangladesh to off-grid solar projects in Indonesia. And so really excited to be working with all these companies. Now in November, as I mentioned, we're going to have essentially a month of online programming, and this is all going to be online, right? We have 100 companies from all around the world, and essentially we'll have a 3-part series of modules. One, we'll have more of a boot camp style, so we'll have a trainer, a startup trainer, talk about lean model, business model canvas, and getting product market fit. We also have what's called a speaker series, which we're inviting foundations, early stage capital, startups, entrepreneurs to share their stories and be able to provide opportunities and programs to the startups. And then number 3, we have Ask Me Anything office hours. And so we'll have office hours of New Energy Nexus staff spread across the month to be able to have high touch points with each of the startups to address some of their needs. So that's November. Now come to COP. We know that COP is going to be a very hectic, chaotic event with hundreds and hundreds of events happening. Our goal is to try to make their time there the most value add and efficient as possible. And so we're going to be doing a curated list of events specifically for the startups in our cohort, so they can go visit Founders Day or early stage investors or different pavilions. They're also going to have a place at the tech stage, but also where Startup Village is going to be as well. So there's going to be a lot of activities happening at COP28 with this delegation of startups. And so my ask to everyone over here is that we're, as everyone finalizes their events for COP28, feel free to reach out to me if you find this interesting, if you think it'd be great to have, 30 to 40 Global South climate tech startups come visit your pavilion or participate in a speech or speaking engagement. We're going to have tons of activities all throughout the 2 weeks. From November 30th to December 12th. And so with that, I'll conclude that this program is, like Mila said, it's really not just a one-time thing. We want to be able to create legacy. And, we hope that we can catalyze climate tech ecosystem building, not just on the later stage companies, but also the early stage companies as well, and be able to do that in the UAE and the overall Middle East region. And so with that, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my contact details in the message box. But thank you very much for having me. Over to you, Jean-Paul.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Nailis. I think we've really enjoyed hearing about the work that you're doing, and particularly how we can address, you mentioned capital, skills, partnerships. I think these are the keys to unlock a lot of this opportunity. So we only have a few minutes, and there's some great questions in the chat, a number of which are being answered as we speak. But I'm going to hand over at this point to Jacinda and GK, who will guide us through the questions and answers for just a few minutes before we conclude. Jacinda, over to you.
Thank you, JP. Really great session. Thank you to all the speakers for your contributions. And please, we do ask all of the participants to now raise your hand or drop in the chat if you have a question, and we'll be happy to call on you and give you the floor. I see Barakat. Ahmed, please, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I am Barakat Ahmed. I am the regional head at the International Solar Alliance, ISA. And it's a pleasure to be with you all here today, since we are talking about the activities and the actions that are being implemented in Africa region. So I will be happy to share with you a couple of the activities and the interventions that the International Solar Alliance is doing in Africa. I will not take too much time. I will be very brief and emphasize. As you know, the International Solar Alliance has 116 countries member across all the world, including Africa. The main objective of the International Solar Alliance is to support countries with different means to scale up solar projects. But how ISA is doing that? There are several areas of intervention that ISA is supporting countries through. Talking about the private sector and creating an enabling environment, the ISA last year in October approved the formation of solar facility in Africa, which was also announced during COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. The global solar facility provides risk guarantee for small solar projects in Africa, with the goal of pooling on solar investments by enhancing investor confidence. The global solar facility will provide payment guarantee fund, insurance fund, Investments Fund, which allowed technical assistance for addressing gaps in the regulatory framework. And coming to the regulatory framework, ISA has a regulatory support program aims to create demand and enhance visitor confidence. The ISA regulatory engagement with member states of the African region covers 5 countries so far, including Ethiopia, Liberia, Gambia, Uganda, and Nigeria. Another area of intervention also is SolarX Startup Challenge. ISA, in collaboration with Invest India, launched the first edition of SolarX Startup Challenge at COP27 last year. The first edition is focused on Africa region, aiming to promote innovation, discover local solutions, and enable entrepreneurs with comprehensive objective of building human and institutional capacity to sustain and grow solar business in the continent. During G20 Energy Transition Working Group, ISA announced the 20 winners of its startup challenge. 20 companies from 10 African countries were declared winners, who will work to increase solar deployment in the continent. And it's worth to mention that out of these 20 winners, 7 are led by women entrepreneurs. Along with the cash grant that ISA will provide, which is about $15 US for each winner, the winning startups will receive support from International Solar Alliance, Invest India, and the other partner organization. They will benefit from also mentorship programs, investor connections, and the market access programs, enabling them to implement their innovations on large scale. In addition, ISA also has a programmatic support, which is giving to its member countries to help them identify and facilitate projects set up. The current intervention of the International Solar Alliance covers 32 African countries. There are small-scale demonstration solar projects already in 14 African countries. The aim of this programmatic support is to create demand for different solar applications, such as water solar pumps, heating and cooling solar system, polarizing health centers, mini grid, and others. And such kind of support has a direct impact and the benefit to the local economics through energy import reduction, job creation, supply of cost-effective electricity to users where electricity supply is not available or available in a limited amount or at high risk. Furthermore,
that's really helpful information, Baraka, and I'm really glad that you're able to share that. Can you possibly share like a link in the chat to where people can find information for applying for these different programs and for additional information, since we're running out of time? We only have about 3 minutes left on the call, so I think it would be really great for them to be able to connect with you offline.
Sure, I will leave my email in the chat box. There's too much work on capacity building, on regulatory framework, on analytic and outreach. So anyone who is really interested to join these activities, I would be glad to connect with all of you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for that important information around Solar Alliance. And with that, I would just pass over to Ayan. I see you also have your hand raised.
Thank you so much, and really great to hear about the various initiatives. A lot is happening in the climate world, which is wonderful, and good to see a lot of friends, and I think His Excellency Razan and others. So I think I wanted to just inform the group of a fund that we launched in Glasgow with Nigel and a few others when we worked together. We launched actually a very large scale adaptation fund, which is supposed to really link the science of the vulnerability of African physical infrastructure. That is our ports, our roads, our crucial infrastructure that links even to agri and also industrial assets which are around the coastline. So we launched the Infrastructure Climate Resilient Fund by AFC Capital Partners with the objective of raising $750 million. We already secured 250 by Sharm el-Sheikh from the Green Climate Fund. We also raised another 100 million. We're hoping to really reach first close of a large size, 450 to 500. early next year. We just want to know how we can really collaborate and work with COP28. But this is covers around 25 African countries. Infrastructure is the most vulnerable in Africa today. All African countries except 8 or 9 are in low-lying coastal area. These are very important assets. They're high revenue generating assets. So it's a private sector led, and a lot of investors that we have are actually pensions fund from Africa, 1 or 2 European pension funds. So it's been a very important journey in bringing a new asset class to the infrastructure side. So I just want to end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. I don't see any more hands. I do see that in the chat we have several of the speakers have shared their contact information. So if you do have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to them independently or back to the Climate Champions team, and we'd be happy to connect you for further funding and partnerships and other ways that we can really leverage this meeting to keep the ball moving forward. I'm going to hand it back over to JP, but just to say, you know, this year nature and climate are, you know, equally as important in this battle, and so adaptation and mitigation are equally as important. And so the Climate Champions will continue to support SMEs, indigenous people, civil society, private businesses, and other other non-state actors to ensure that your voices are incorporated and included in this year's COP, included in the global stock take, which will be taking place during COP this year. And so please, you know, reach out to us with your innovations and with your opportunities, and we will make sure that those are continually supported. And with that, over to you, JP. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacinda, and thank you to all the people who have contributed. And I think what has been a very useful call. It's difficult to cover so much ground in a short amount of time, but I think in particular what we can see from the call is that how much has actually been done in Africa between COP26 and COP28. And there's actually a large number of initiatives that are ongoing. On this call, we've heard about particularly the importance being put on the African private sector, on the importance of actively looking at what the transition looks like, investing in new sectors such as green hydrogen, looking at insurance, which will catalyze investment into key sectors like the agricultural sector, and as well, very critically, looking at the role of impact investment and technologies to really make sure that the investments happen at scale and faster than is currently happening. We need to continue to address the perception of risk on the continent, but highlight that the opportunity for climate resilient investment is largest on the continent. The comparative advantage for African economies is through this climate positive growth, which has been emphasized at the Africa Climate Summit. And I think that's really the emphasis of what we want to see in COP28. We want to see real deals that deliver for nature and for climate, and which have resilience at its center, delivering on adaptation and also inclusion, ensuring participation of women and youth, and looking at climate as being indivisible from development. With that, I'd like to thank once again the Climate Champions team, Her Excellency Razan, Boholo, and all of the team. And I wish everyone a good day, and we look forward to seeing you at COP28. Thank you.
Thank you, JP. Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.